This is just a little demonstration of how to use the debugger, and I'm going to use an example from a future class, actually, on Wednesday's class to illustrate that. Okay, this is my tweak of the book's example of this kind of clever way to take an integer and reverse the digits. So we'll go over the details of that tomorrow, but the idea is we want to enter a positive integer, and what it'll do is it'll reverse a number. So if I put in 2468, it'll print out 8642. Okay, fine. You notice that what I've added to the prompt from the book is a number that it has to be less than. Okay, so let's test that out. So actually I can just copy. I'm doing a Control or Command C, Command V. So it's the instruction is it must be less than or equal to that. Turns out Scanner, by the way, is very good at reading numbers that have the commas in it. And it turns out that this is, in fact, the reverse of that. So we can sort of check that. We have 21438474112. Okay, very good. Now, what happens? You say, well, it has to be less than or equal to that. Now, what about that? What happens if we put in just one more? Okay, all of a sudden, we get something that looks a little bit strange. Now, what the heck happened? Well, we can use the debugger to try to do that. Now, here's how we set up the debug. Well, Netbeans is already set up for it. What we need to do is specify breakpoints. So here the breakpoints are very straightforward because we're just in the main method. But so I'm going to put a breakpoint right here, and you do that by going, you see these little line numbers here? If you right click on that, and you may have right clicked on it inadvertently in the past and seen that little pink, or is it pink, or is it salmon, or is it rose? Nobody knows. Okay, what that does is that establishes a breakpoint, meaning that when you run in debug mode, it's going to stop when it hits that line. Okay, so here's how we can run it, at least from here. Right click, and instead of run file, click debug file. Okay, now you notice that it opens up two additional tabs in addition to the output one. One is for variables. That'll actually show what the value of the variables are, although we can also hover over things and they should be showing, but okay, the call stack, that really isn't needed here. In a more complicated program, it can be useful to see what sequence of calls were made to get to that point. We don't really need that here. Okay, but here we need to go to the output, and let's put in that big value just to kind of see what happened. All right, so we hit enter, and there we are. Now again, we should be able to hover. Okay, so it says it's not known. Number, now number is the number we read in, so we can double check that, or we can simply go to the variables tab, and that will show all of the variables that are here. So we have number, which is that, reverse, which currently is 0. Remember, it was initialized to 0. And then there's our scanner, and then reverse. Number is that long one. 0 is what reverse is so far. Okay, so now last digit is now 3, and that is correct. And then see what they do is they pick off the last digit by modulo 10, and so that picks off 3. Then reverse takes the current incumbent, which initially is 0, and then multiplies it by 10. That kind of shifts things over a digit, and then you add the last digit, and there it is. And then finally, what this does is, again, due to integer divide, when we divide by 10, that basically shifts everything to the right. Okay, now you notice what I'm doing here. I can go step by step. Okay, we can double check the while. Is that bigger than 0? Last I checked it is. So the next step, we go to last digit, which currently is not known, and then is now 1. Okay, so we have lopped off the other. Now, what we can do is we can kind of fast forward a little bit with this green arrow, and we say continue, and that'll go to the next breakpoint. See, so reverse is building up. So far it's looking pretty good. So we got the 3, the 1, the 4, got the 3, the next should be 8, and then the next should be a 4, and then a 7, and then a 4, and a 1. Okay, so far everything is going fine, and we only have one number to go, so that must have been where things went wrong. So let's advance it by 1. The last digit was 2, that's correct. And now there's where the problem was. See, this reverse, when reverse is supposed to shift everything over to the left by the tens digit, the problem is that the number it was shifting was too large for an int to hold. And so actually what Java is, suffers from the same little gotcha that most other languages do. And that is, what happened is it basically went into underflow. So when it shifted, when it multiplied by 10, it put the digital representation in a place where it was actually representing a negative number. And that's due to the way that integers are represented in the digital computer. So it underflowed, and we got this negative number, which was totally incorrect. Okay, the main thing here is that this is how you use the debugger. You set a breakpoint, and we could set more than one. And then when you run the debugger, it shows, again, we have to enter something. Let's enter something that was actually a legal one. Okay, once we at the breakpoint, then the little control panel up here helps us step through. So we can actually end early if we hit this little red box here. We can pause the thing. We can continue, which kind of goes until it hits the next breakpoint. When I hit this, it went all the way down to the while test, and because number was still bigger than 0, it went back and then hit the next breakpoint. I can step over. I usually don't use the step over expression. I step into. That's something I use a lot as well. Or the step out, like if I'm calling a method, I might want to step out in the middle of it. Another thing that's sometimes useful is instead of setting another breakpoint, I can run to the cursor. So if I set my cursor here and I select run to cursor, then it goes to where the cursor is. So that's another very handy one. And then if I'm kind of satisfied with things, I can actually turn off the breakpoint in the middle, or you can even set new breakpoints while it's running, and it'll go to that. Or if you turn them off and you hit the go, then it will continue to the end. Okay, so that's a quickie introduction to the Netbeans debugger, and I hope you find it useful.